Hey, we're here for the Chiefs Outsiders podcast, and before we get into what we're here to talk about, we're recording this about 15 minutes after the Broncos wet the bed, or whatever you want to call that game.
Yeah.
But that was a masterpiece performance, and I think that they got rid of Fangio and got worse at coach. I think Geno Smith looked a lot better than Russell Wilson. I mean, the Broncos played good defense. They ran the ball well, but that was not... I talked about it in our AFC West preview show that people were picking the Broncos for the Super Bowl, betting that.
The team was talking about Super Bowl without being asked. They were bringing it up on their own. And again, like we talked about in that preview, we kind of hit the nail on the head. That looked exactly like a team with a new head coach and a new quarterback and wasn't quite sure who they were, and it cost them frequently.
It also looked a lot like the Broncos from last year.
Yeah, it really did.
Gritty, like, oh, we're gritty because we're not good. You never see a Super Bowl team that's talking about how gritty they were. They talk about how good they were.
Right.
And the Broncos last year were gritty.
And man, again with Russ like I said in that preview episode, when the thing with Russ that really catches your eye is that deep ball. And last year after he hurt the hand, it just wasn't quite right. And tonight it didn't look right again. He was leaving those balls inside and short just often, and it's like I would be very worried if I was a Broncos fan.
And how is it that they were almost through this first half without really targeting the receivers?
Yeah, and again, like I said, that breakaway touchdown by Judy, that ball was at minimum 7-8 yards underthrown. I mean, he was the only guy on that side of the field, and he had to stop and wait on it.
And there's underthrowing a guy on purpose, and then there's he had him beat.
He had a walk-in
There was no
touchdown.
reason to
yeah,
underthrow
it was a walk-in touchdown,
Yeah.
and he had to wait on it. They still scored, but
So, this is a Chiefs game recap where we were talking about last week, but it was so glorious just seeing what happened with the Broncos. We had to start there.
yep.
Now, as far as the Kansas City Chiefs, they were the exact opposite. They did everything you could have wanted them to do with very few negatives.
They really did.
And so the only real negatives were the injuries. And so you want to go through those injuries. Do you think any of those guys who are dealing with it besides Mahomes are going to play this week?
I do think Trey Smith plays. That's just a gut feeling. As a guard with an ankle injury, you can tape it up generally, depending on how bad it is. We don't know yet. But that's just kind of my gut. I would say Justin Watson probably not playing. McDuffie probably not playing. And then I know there's one more that we're missing, an injury to a semi-relevant guy.
We're also, while you're looking at the injury report, we're also I don't think we're seeing any long-term injuries out of what happened in this game.
Not yet that we know of.
And then...
Oh, Butker. Butker's the big one. And they signed Matt Amendola to the practice squad today, actually in the middle of that Broncos game.
And that's Danny's dad, right?
It's his son, actually.
Of the Fighting Amendolas.
Yeah, it's his son. But he kicked for the Jets. I don't think he's very good, but, you got to have a second guy who can kick the ball if Butker can't go.
Okay, let's just do an aside here. Just pause the episode. Is there any merit at all to the idea that if we had Justin Reed kick off all the time, it gives us a better coverage unit because he's a safety, not a kicker?
I was saying that during the game, and the thing the team will say, and I'm sure it's true that it's how they feel on it, is that it's just not worth the injury risk to a premium player that you just paid to be a big part of this defense and the leadership of the team. And that's the only drawback because, like you said, having a safety with, obviously much better athleticism who can still kick the ball through the back of the end zone out there would be a better for the coverage unit.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I don't think I would do it, but it definitely crosses your mind like, just adding one more defender to the coverage team.
Right.
But the way, kicks are not as big a part of the game as they used to be, the way they've changed the rules.
And like Dave Tobe says all the time, if they're leaving a ball short on kickoff, it's because they wanted to, because Butker can put it through the back of the end zone every single time. So that's just kind of, and that probably part of it too is that Butker is so established, obviously, as a kicker, that you lose kind of some of the gamesmanship if you were to have Justin Reed do it.
So, like I said, we could just sit here, because that was a nearly flawless game. We could just sit here and congratulate everything. But let's try to, before we do that, let's try to nitpick some negatives. We had a little bit with the injuries. I would say I love nothing more than small sample size stats. And Juju Smith-Schuster being on pace for 32 fumbles this year is a negative.
I don't think he gets there, but...
Well, it'd only be 16 lost fumbles, though.
Yeah, that is true. Still a pretty high mark, but...
That's a negative, but I don't think it means anything. He didn't come here with a reputation as a fumbler. The first one, he's trying to do a little too much, and he's on the sideline. We didn't lose anything. And the second one was a great defensive play. Ripping that ball out can happen to anybody.
Yeah, he didn't even see the guy coming from behind him, so it's tough to blame him for that one. It hurt because it was right before the half, and the Chiefs were going to score on that drive, as they did on basically every drive they tried to score on.
Okay, so what else can we nitpick here? What was not perfect in the game?
I think the tackling was pretty rough at first. There were stretches. I know Willie missed a couple. Brian Cook missed a couple. Trying to think. Juan Thornhill, he missed a couple. And it wasn't egregious. I don't think it was as bad as it has been in years past.
Again, we're nitpicking because the Cardinals had 7 points. What was it, late?
It was 44-7, I believe. Or at the minimum, it was 37-7 before they scored again.
Yeah, so that's nitpicking. Maybe it wasn't perfect in the tackling. I thought pressure was good. Maybe not great, but I
think it was
Karlaftis
inconsistent.
Looked good.
Which, that's part of it. Karlaftis did look good, and he played the second most snaps of any defender on the team, which is encouraging. And it's just good for his growth. You want him out there. You want him seeing all of these different looks. But as far as the pass rush, a part of why it probably felt so inconsistent is because against a guy like Kyler Murray, you have to rush contain. And you're not going to get consistent pressure rushing contain. You just can't do it because then you wouldn't be containing, right? So that's again, it's a little nitpicky. Chris Jones was good, but he had the forced fumble, but he didn't get the sack. He let Kyler slip under him the one time. Dunlap had a sack on a third, fourth effort. Snead had a sack on the early blitz, and he's really good at that.
Let's see. Nitpick. Negative. We're negative on this show today.
Real negative.
Hardman. Am I the only one? Patrick Mahomes said that he owes Nicole for a couple of balls he didn't get him. Mm-hmm. The first one should have been a touchdown. They scored anyway. Didn't hurt the team. Yeah. But we're talking about we've invested a draft capital into Nicole Hardman. He's been here a while. He's now going to get more opportunities because Tyreek's gone. And the ball's out in front of him, maybe overthrown just a hair. He reaches out and he touches the ball, which tells me that if he goes down to his slides or dives and really sells out for that ball, that it's a touchdown. And so it didn't affect the game really in any way, but it's a little bit, I would like to have seen some more from Nicole Hardman.
And that's the reason that's concerning is because that's a flashback to, the rookie year and the second year with McColl, where that's all the team talked about was you got to keep running, man. He's going to hit you. You just got to keep going. And I'm not too concerned about that. I think the biggest thing to take away from that actually is in the postgame, not only did Pat say he owed him 2 touchdowns, which we kind of disagree with, but what he said was that McColl has shown a lot of success on those routes, and he believes there's a reason to keep going to him on those routes.
All right. So you think of anything else negative to say before we start the party?
The O-line play was not fantastic. Mahomes did not get sacked. He was on his back an awful lot more than we'd like to see. He got hit fairly regularly, but Orlando does not look like a guy who deserves $23 million a year. I'll say that. And he did drop about 15 pounds, it looks like. I didn't notice it helping. He's still getting beat around the edge just about any time you want to do it. If you're going to try and beat him around the arc and you have any speed or bend, you're going to do it.
And kind of what I took away last year was it took a little while to figure out that he's great at 3 of the 4 things that you measure a tackle by, and stopping the speed rush to the outside isn't one of them, which means Mahomes need to be stepping up more than stepping back, and it was an adjustment. They talked in the preseason a lot, really weird verbiage last preseason about, they said all the things that a new receiver and quarterback combination would say about each other. He's like, we're just adjusting to how each other plays. Like, I thought the way we played was, you keep him over there so I can do my job. And I think what it means, the way you play with him at left tackle is you be more ready to step up than step back.
Right, and that is, we haven't finished with our negatives fully, I don't know, but a positive from this game, we mentioned it earlier, I believe it was the second preseason game, you saw Pat start to get into that bad habit of drifting a little bit. That was not a problem in this game. He stepped up well and through the pocket, navigated the pocket really well all game. I was going to say, we could do an entire episode of 2 hours talking only about Patrick Mahomes' plays in this game. He was that good on the long, long list of fantastic Patrick Mahomes games. But it doesn't stand out any more than any of the other ones, you know? It's just 15 going to work.
So we just checked the injury report. There were 2 guys who didn't practice today.
Yep. McDuffie and Butker were the only guys who didn't practice today. So it's better than I thought, just based on how the game felt. It looks like it will be Matt Amendola on Thursday, unless Butker really just, has a miraculous healing on that ankle. I don't know. And then McDuffie, they just would not try and rush out the first-round pick and, risk a serious injury. There's no reason to.
All right, we did our very best to be negative. Now, let's start the party. So
Let's do it.
Couldn't have played any better. My very first, let's talk about, there were a lot of good things. Let's talk about the ones that surprised us.
Okay.
So I was surprised. I think that's as good as CEH has looked.
Yes.
That first quarter, the play where he got the outside and then turned it upfield, I don't remember seeing that from him. And the fact that they decided to throw the ball to him a few times, something I'm almost wondering if we had so many short plays to Tyreek where it was that replaced getting the ball to the running backs out of the backfield in the offense.
I think that's a little bit of it. But in terms of just CH from this game, what we saw, you're 100% right. That is the most explosive we have seen, except for maybe that Houston opener as a rookie. He had the breakaway touchdown of like 30-plus yards. But, he looked good, and he was running away from guys, which is something we haven't seen in a while. And in terms of the receiving part, he had 3 catches. Nothing crazy. He's capable of more than that. But it's encouraging because he has not gotten 3 catches very often through the first 2 years. And he's a guy who should be getting 3 catches about every week.
So now we started on to running backs, so let's finish that conversation.
With Isaiah Pacheco, who in training camp, the hype train for Pacheco was unstoppable. It was like this is Priest Holmes, and he's about to win the MVP. And we knew it wasn't really going to be like that, but he did look really good.
And if anything, I mean, Clyde is more that player. But, I mean, as a downhill runner, like Pacheco looked pretty darn good. I mean, if you could only keep one of them, like say this was franchise mode in fantasy, and you said I can have one of those two guys as the Chiefs running back from now on, which one would you keep? I'm keeping Pacheco with no injury history, and he's younger and just goes.
If you right now told me for the next 5 years one of those guys is going to be your starting running back, I would go with that Pacheco, because the athletic profile is so much better.
Even after in this game, I thought Hilaire maybe looked more impressive. And Pacheco was running when half of the guys on the field, they're all still trying. Nobody's not trying during the game. It's a regular
season game.
But the intensity has slacked off a little bit at that point.
But, I mean, just to run through it, he had 4 snaps in the second half, all right in a row. Or in the second quarter, sorry. All right in one little 5-6 play window. He had 4 snaps. So they wanted to get him out there, but he was not part of the game plan as let's really get after him with this guy. But then once the game got out of hand, they gave him that first full drive where he got all of the work, and that was with Mahomes in the game. And on that drive alone, I believe he rushed for like 45 yards and had the touchdown. And again, you want to talk about Mahomes being great. It's the little things. I'm sure everyone saw the clip of him going and chasing down Pacheco's first touchdown ball so that he could have that. And I
didn't see that.
Yeah, because Pacheco, threw it off, and Pat, you see in, the end zone camera, Pat just, flashes by and runs to go get it.
Pacheco's like, bro, I'm getting 100 of these. I'm not even worried about one.
Right.
But, so, I don't want to disrespect Jerick McKinnon, who showed last year that he can be dynamic, he can be a playmaker. He didn't have that many plays, but he made a few plays, and I think the best thing going right now is that we have 3 guys who are completely capable of making plays and don't care who gets the most touches.
That is big, and again, talking about this running back room as a whole, last season, a season in which the Chiefs had one of the best offenses in football and went to the AFC title game. The Chiefs all season long had 5 rushes by a running back of 18 or more yards. In this game, they had 3. No, 4. And Pacheco had 2, one for 22 and one for 18, and then Clyde and McKinnon both had an 18-yard run. And then again, as a whole, I think what we saw from McKinnon, because him and Clyde had the same snap count while the game was competitive. We don't know if that'll continue, but they love Jerick McKinnon as a pass-blocking back because he'll throw a guy.
And so he's the guy. He's the oldest of the players. Mm-hmm. He's had some doubts at points where it looked like his career could be over. If there's anyone who's going to be selfish and trying to demand that they want this role for their career,
he's trying to get paid still. He's not. He got a decent contract once, but
he was loving life over there, hanging out with Andy while Pacheco was getting all the carries.
Him and Clyde both, and Andy said something about it that they were both just loving that for him.
And so it's a great running back room. I'm thinking right now about Larry Johnson. And when he had the 2,000-yard season or the 1,750-yard season, he had 2 consecutive 1,700-yard seasons, and he carried the ball over 400 times in a season. And they showed the stat. No running back has ever carried the ball 400 times in a season and then been good afterwards.
It's a career ender.
They go downhill very rapidly after doing that. So if you've got 3 good running backs and they can get 100 carries apiece, which she'll end up with less than that. But,
right.
But the point being, we should have 3 fresh guys at all times, barring injury.
We know Clyde will clear 100 carries. I think Pacheco probably does too. I wouldn't be surprised if McKinnon did.
Well, if LJ carried the ball 400 times, I doubt we run the ball 300 this year.
Oh, yeah, that's true. I guess
Just
I
as
was,
a team-
I was overestimating those numbers.
As a team, we run the ball less than anybody. But
Yeah.
that's not even the point. The point is, no matter how this plays out, even if we have some injuries throughout the season, nobody is going to get such a load. They're going to be fresh all the time.
Oh, yeah, and they're going to rotate those guys. And another thing, which I didn't love it. I didn't love the decision to keep him, and I definitely didn't love the decision to keep him and then make him inactive. Ronald Jones is on this football team, and he's a capable running back. He can play.
So when they had 4 running backs on the roster the last 2 seasons, they come out of cuts with 4 running backs, said, this is stupid. You don't need 4 running backs. Keep another wide receiver. Keep another lineman, whatever the case may be. But then I went back and looked. In each of the last 4 seasons, we've had 4 running backs get a significant number of carries.
Yeah.
So every year, we are needing that many running backs. So they're protecting them based on what's happened in the past.
And I guess what that really primarily is Clyde insurance if he goes down, because Andy indicated it before the game that he basically said that Rojo would be inactive because he said, well, yeah, we'll probably only keep 3 up and special teams will be a part of the decision. Clyde is the only other back on the team besides Rojo who does not play special teams. So it's going to be really tough, barring an injury to another position, for him to even be active as long as Clyde is healthy.
So the running backs are great, but that's not the story. Let's talk. I got one more negative. I just remembered what it is. Stat padding from MVS. I don't know if he knows it, but double catching a ball, you don't get 2 receptions.
Yeah.
So he made every play that came to him. He caught all the balls. I was a little bit of he double caught at least 2, if not 3 balls. And it's okay to just that first time, just go ahead and grab it.
Yeah. Although, compared to other number 11s in Chiefs history, I really like this one. I don't know what it is. I think it's the running forward with the ball part. But for some reason, I am sold.
DeMarcus.
But anyway.
We love you, DeMarcus.
No, we don't.
We love you even more. We were hoping you would be the Raiders' go-to third down target.
I really was, yeah.
And didn't work out, but a lot of clear upgrade from DeMarcus to MVS. And we haven't even seen him do what he does when he's cooking, is go deep. And we haven't seen that yet. But so we've went a long way without saying Juju.
Yeah, and other than talking about the fumbles, which, again, we're not really too worried about, it happens. Every once in a while, you're going to lose the ball, even if you are one of the best players on the team. And he looked like it in that game. I think it was 7 catches for 79 yards, I believe. I'll check.
There was nothing mind-blowing. He didn't make any kind of circus
He was
catch
just getting open and catching the ball.
He looked like he fit. He looked like he was comfortable in his role. He knew the offense. He looked like a number 1 receiver.
And one thing that got me extremely excited during the game, which we saw it in that Commanders preseason game, they threw the fade in the end zone. But what I was so excited about is right before the half, it was on the second possession right before the half after he fumbled and they were going down to get the field goal. They threw a back shoulder ball to Juju just because it was let's see if we can get it one more first down, and they just snap, boom, throw the ball. And
that's not what we do.
Because we've not done that, and there's no reason not to do that when you have a quarterback like Patrick Mahomes.
Okay, so Juju,
he went 6 for 79 and looked good doing it.
Yeah, nobody came out of that game and thought, "Oh, we're short at receiver."
No.
It's a deeper position than it has been.
And we also have not talked about Skye Moore yet, who only had 1 target, had the catch. It was on a scramble drill, broke multiple tackles after the catch, 30-yard play. I mean, and he's going to get more involved.
he's an example. You could say the same thing about Nicole Hardman. That if we didn't have 17 legitimate weapons on offense, if we were a more limited team, we could have fed Skye Moore balls, and he could have,
What I'll say about that is, out of the 15 to 20 other teams in the league that I guaranteed were very interested in Skye Moore, almost all of them would be in a position where he would be more heavily featured at this point already, because he is an NFL talent. He is an NFL separation guy. He's going to get open. It's just a matter of getting him comfortable and integrated, and there's no reason to... There's a fly in my face. But there's no reason to rush him into that if he's not ready.
Start mid-sentence about Skye Moore. If he was on any other team.
So, yeah, and out of the 15 to 20 other teams in the draft that I'm guarantee were interested in Skye Moore, almost all of them, he would be playing a heavier role and being more involved. Because he is good.
I feel like there's a few guys that could be very productive players, and they're just behind other very productive players at this point. And that goes into the next position group. When you say Skye Moore, if we didn't have everyone else we have, we could be feeding him the ball.
Yep.
Think about the tight end room.
And Kelsey, like I said, he's fine wine. He is unreal. The guy, all the last couple of months, he's a 33-year-old tight end, and you know who the last guy at tight end to be good at 33 was? Nobody. It doesn't matter. Do you remember what he looked like last year?
So my younger son and I had a debate on the ball that Kelsey caught in stride about whether that was more impressive as a throw or as a catch. So I've seen a lot of bad quarterbacks play for this team.
That was throw all the way, by the way.
I was making the case that the catch was... Okay, he's running, and he didn't slow down.
Because it was a perfect throw.
It's so hard to do, though.
It is. That's what you get whenever you have the two best players at their positions in the league. Two future Hall of Famers playing together, you're going to get some amazing plays.
Yeah, just fantastic. But the case I would make is that we would have an above-average NFL tight end room without Travis Kelce, and he's the best tight end in the league.
Especially if Blake Bell was out there, who he can do a lot of things. But Noah Gray didn't have a big game. I think it was only the one catch I remember, but it was in the red zone, again, on a little bit of a scramble drill. Got open and caught the ball at, I believe it was like the 3 or the 4 yard line. Pretty close to scoring. And then I'm probably wrong just looping this together, but Fortson scored on a 1 yard touchdown. Again, it was a beautiful throw, but a really impressive catch by Fortson.
Fortson is all upside. I was doubtful. And then when he got injured last year, I said, it's just not in the cards for this guy. And I think he's just, half of all his receptions are touchdowns in his career.
Yeah, it's close. I think he has 7 catches and 3 touchdowns.
And when you watch him run, and you watch he doesn't get that many opportunities, but when he does it feels like this guy could be a star in the NFL, not just a role player.
It's almost kind of one of those things where, how did we not see this earlier? With the 2 years he was a receiver on the Chiefs practice squad, is he's too big to be a receiver, but he's still really good. And, it's why didn't they move him earlier? Because it wasn't like he's too slow to be a receiver. It's just you're not going to get open at that size. But then it's maybe if he plays tight end...
So many weapons, and nobody really had a bad game. From that standpoint, every play that was there to be made was made, except for the 2 that didn't connect with McCole.
Yeah, so it really was a masterclass, and it starts at the top with Andy Reid, who has been drawing up perfect game plans for 23 years now. And it was unbelievable. They executed almost everything all day long.
And so we laid all this hype on the offense. Let's see if we have the same player that on defense that was the most exciting. What happened on defense, or what's the number one player that you thought popped in this game?
It's kind of weird because for me, there isn't an obvious answer there. Like, there was no guy who just dominated and had 2 takeaways, and that's why that we held them out. It was just a really good collective effort, and just, aggressive and swarming to the ball, and the young guys weren't making mistakes. But if I had to pick a guy, I'd say it was either Chris Jones or Nick Bolton.
And neither one of those is the name I was looking for. We were talking about a guy that has the potential to be a leader on the defense, but we've been waiting to see it, and that was Juan Thornhill for me.
Yeah. No,
because he had the one crazy play where we've seen him do that before, where he came out of nowhere and jumped in front and almost had the takeaway.
If that ball was thrown 6 inches inside, that was a pick.
But then also, they had a deep ball later in the game that it looked like had a chance, and he just jumped over and got a fingertip on it and deflected that away.
And I'm really glad you said that because I was forgetting Juan. He had a good game. He looked really good. And it's kind of one of those things like we talked about before the season. He admitted that he has not felt right the last 2 years physically with the knee. It was still bothering him. If he's really ready and healthy and not worried about that knee, and he's got the mental ability that he had as a rookie, he's going to have a great year. And he told us he's going to be an All-Pro. I'd love to see it. That'd be awesome. But even if he's not, he can have a really good year.
He flashed big play potential.
Before we stop talking about Juan Thornhill, that first play that we were talking about that he made on the sideline, that was a high leverage situation there too, because that was immediately after the Juju fumble. The Chiefs were up 20-7, and that would have been a completion if he didn't make that play, and they would have been in field goal range with time on the clock. They could have gotten more potentially. That could have. I mean, you look at this game. The Chiefs were up 37-7. Never felt out of control. But if there was ever a moment for the Cardinals to get back in it, that was it. And Juan closed on that ball.
We had the one play, 3rd down, backs rolling out of the backfield. That was never open. That was never going to be completed. Maybe he didn't feel like there was anything else there. He just lobs it over there, and we had to punt. You're like, okay, well, we've been perfect on offense. Now we have to punt. We'd had the missed extra point, and those 2 little things opened the door for the one thing that happens to this team. When they lose, a lot of times they come out and just look completely dominant. It was both of the Cincinnati games.
Yep.
We've seen it a few times where we looked just unbeatable, and then we allowed this big comeback. And there was a moment when it looked like that could happen. It was exactly where you're talking about. We didn't get the extra point. We had to punt, and they were going to get back-to-back possessions if they finished that off. And they came up and made the play when they needed it. And there was that spot, and then the next play where Kyler Murray did us a favor because his receiver slips on 3rd down. He comes off of that receiver, and that guy stood right back up and was open. And instead he didn't make that play.
And I think, like we already talked about, the defense as a whole collectively played well together, which is really exciting whenever you consider how many new pieces and how many young guys were playing. But not just that. So much of the credit for Kyler Murray's struggles has to go to Steve Spagnuolo because Kyler was confused and he was genuinely wasn't sure what was going on. And we've talked about it so many times over the last 4 seasons that Steve Spagnuolo defenses take a while to get going and there's gonna be bumps early and they dominated from the very beginning and looked good as a unit.
So let's go through the positions a little bit more than we have already. So we talked about Thornhill flashing. They didn't make a bunch of deep plays.
Nothing.
And we hardly noticed Reed. So that means he's doing his job.
Right.
Then what's really, I haven't heard anyone say, is that our corners were young. We had some unproven players in there. And then we lost a guy that we're counting on.
Mm-hmm.
And who was the guy that was just victimized in that game?
There wasn't one.
So that means we had 2, if not 3, young, unproven players on the field that weren't high draft picks, and they weren't carving us up. And I know they had a couple of weapons out, but they're NFL players over there.
Exactly. And talking about the corners, it was Snead had the sack early on the blitz, and then other than that, didn't see him a lot. You assume he was doing L'Jarius Snead things and playing well. Trent McDuffie played 21 snaps before leaving with a hamstring and was not targeted. That's good.
So I want to talk about fan perspective on safety play. Because Matthew was seen a lot doing good things and bad things. And everyone had an opinion because he was popping out. And it felt like a lot of times with safeties, you just never see them, especially the deeper coverage safety. If you didn't get burned, you don't get seen.
They spend half the game off the screen.
And it felt like a lot of last year, I didn't see a lot of good or a lot of bad from Thornhill. You'll see it if there's a missed tackle or something.
Yep.
But Justin Reed, we just didn't see much of him.
Mm-mm. And
that's just the nature of the position a little bit. But overall, the entire secondary has to get an A grade.
And continuing to talk about the corners, Jalen Watson was the first one to come in after McDuffie went out. And it was kind of trending that way in the preseason that early in camp, it was Joshua Williams, the 4th-round pick out of a Division II, who was getting the early run. But as the preseason went on, it was pretty clear that Watson had jumped him a little bit and was that guy. And then, so McDuffie leaves, and, you know, the game's still a little bit in the balance. And immediately, first play, I think it was like 3rd and 4, they just throw a jump ball to A.J. Green on the 7th-round rookie, Jalen Watson. You can nitpick and say the ball hit him in the head. You know, he didn't technically make a play on it, but he's in great position, forced A.J. Green, who is a veteran receiver, to the sideline, and then as the ball's getting there, turned his head and tried to make a play. That's a 7th-round rookie. I mean, he made... And then after that, you didn't see a lot of him. He gave up the touchdown, the last touchdown late, whenever... the Chiefs had already pulled Mahomes. It didn't matter. And then he gave up the 2-point conversion. And it's like, oh, no, that's not true. He technically gave up the Hollywood one, too. But a little bit of that, I'd say, is on Spagnuolo. Because that was cover 0, and you're leaving 7th-round rookie Jalen Watson one-on-one with Hollywood Brown, who, and you know, based on the formation, that they were kind of trying to scheme him open. But... not super important. The corners looked really good. That's the takeaway.
The whole secondary looked good. I thought the linebackers looked good. One play that's underappreciated maybe a little bit because half the Chiefs fans never saw it was the first Cardinals possession. We set the tone for the game by jumping out 14-0, which required us to stop the Cardinals on their first possession. And everyone... kind of will remember the L'Jarius Snead sack, but right before that, Kyler looked like he had a first down, and then Bolton tracked him down 2 yards short.
Yeah.
And we ended up forcing the punt, scoring again, setting the tone, and going from there. And I felt like they made most of the plays that were there to be made.
And again, talking about that specific 3-play stretch to start the game for the Cardinals, Nick Bolton, who... the biggest knock on him coming out of Mizzou was his speed. Sideline to sideline, they were not sure if he was fast enough to be a good linebacker at the NFL level. The first 2 plays of the game were Nick Bolton tackling Kyler Murray for a 1-yard loss, and then tackling Kyler Murray right at the sticks, basically, right before the sticks. And Kyler Murray is very fast. There's something to be said about Nick Bolton knowing how to play football and putting himself in positions to make plays.
So I think we've transitioned 2 years ago, I would say our linebacking core was the weakness of the team.
Yeah.
We were slow,
Very.
unathletic,
Very.
maybe even a little bit old at the position. And that has been flipped pretty quickly to not only the two guys that are leaders of the defense and staples, but also we've got another guy right behind him that we have high hopes for.
And Chenal didn't play a ton. I don't know how many snaps really, but it wasn't very much. But I think you saw some good things. I know there was a 3rd and 1. I believe it was a 3rd and 1 where they actually, I guess it's kind of Sam linebacker, but the way it was lined up, it kind of looked like he was playing defensive end in that specific scenario. And you could tell the Chiefs were pretty sure they were going to run the ball. And it didn't go his way, but if it had, I think he probably would have held his own in that scenario. So, I don't know. Leo Chenal, it's going to be a little bit before you see a ton from him, I think, but very athletic. Very athletic.
All right, so defensive line. Chris Jones made a few plays.
He forced the fumble, which he kind of landed on. Is the only reason he didn't recover it, I would guess. And then other than that, he was just disruptive. Like I said earlier, he let Kyler slip under him for one of the sacks, but he was in the backfield all day doing Chris Jones things.
And I'm way too hyped on Karlaftis. I guess technically he didn't make... I remember a nice stop on a running play in the first half. He would have been on the defensive right side and made a nice play there. He didn't actually make a lot of plays, but I remember him being in position, applying pressure. No one guy usually gets Murray, but he flushed him a few times.
That is the point, and like we said earlier, when you're rushing contain like you have to against Kyler Murray, it's tough to get consistent pressure. But, and this is kind of a can of worms I'm about to open here, PFF was all the talk this morning because they gave Patrick Mahomes a 70 grade for that football game. Josh Allen got a 91. Patrick Mahomes, for that performance, was rated at a 70. Not important. That's not even what I'm talking about. But PFF also charted, which generally I think their grading system is terrible. I've never found it very useful. But their raw stats is another thing. And they charted Chris Jones with 7 pressures and Karlaftis with 6.
Let me just make something clear right now. If you have a system and you happen to be PFF or whatever, you've put your stamp out there that somehow people reference you, I guess if you have enough people working at your place, you get some kind of credentials. If you have a system that doesn't say Patrick Mahomes was upper echelon in that game, your system is broken.
Right.
You have no business ranking players if you came out of that and saying that wasn't an excellent performance.
And
list off all the plays that he didn't make. Like, what play did he not make?
There weren't any. And that's the whole discourse around it is you look at the list of the quarterbacks that were on that. He was right above Davis Mills. He was below guys like Ryan Tannehill, Kirk Cousins, Mac Jones, just guys who didn't do anything. Mac Jones scored 7 points and lost to the Dolphins. And, again, not important.
It is important. I'm in a mood now. I was out here having a good day, and you done ruined it. I'm fixing to find out where this PFF office is and go over and PF them right in the PF. Every play that was there to be made was made, and team success, statistical success, the QBR, quarterback rating, everything that you can measure out of a football game, and then PFF's like, nah, I'm not feeling it.
And then again,
not feeling it
because it was a legitimate topic on Twitter this morning, and there were a couple of the PFF guys defending it and kind of trying to explain it. And one of the things that got said was that separation for the receiver matters, and things like that, and like how open a guy is matters, or like the underhand touchdown is not impressive, right? So it's like if Patrick Mahomes had a worse head coach, he would get more respect as a quarterback because it's his fault that guys are open.
Mahomes is what people don't realize is that he only throws to guys who are open. I didn't even realize it until I was watching a lot of videos in the off season, and the big takeaway is he doesn't throw the ball into risky situations very often. It's why he has the second lowest interception rate in NFL history. He throws the ball to guys who are open, which is a good thing. And if Kyler Murray had done that, whenever most critical point in the game, the only point of the game besides the opening kickoff where they had any chance to get into a competitive football game, he had a guy wide open that was 7 yards from him at the first down marker,
that could have
open.
Been a touchdown, potentially, really.
And he didn't throw it to him. But if he had, we'd have to dock him because he threw it to a guy who was wide open. Now, if he zinged it in between two guys to someone who wasn't open, and it was a miraculous catch, then you get extra points for that.
And again, things that they were saying that are just laughably bad is that they graded him with one turnover-worthy play, which that was a big talking point 2 years ago in the 14-2 season. They said, yeah, sure, he was great, but he had all these turnover-worthy plays. And everyone was like, what the hell is a turnover-worthy play?
Someone else mentioned that to me today. What was the turnover?
The turnover-worthy play was they were down at the 10. And it was a little play action, and Mahomes rolls out to his left, and there's a guy on him, so he kind of just lofted it up towards the front pylon for Noah Gray, and the corner was in front of him. And that was my reaction is that was not even close to being a turnover-worthy play because, A, the corner was Marco Wilson, who is not a guy known for making plays on the ball. He's not some elite guy. But, B, this was a contested throw that was basically out of bounds in the end zone to a DB who was on his heels because the Chiefs were scoring every time.
We talked about that play when it happened, and we backed it up and looked at it. I wasn't watching the game with him. I backed it up and looked at it. And when he threw that ball, Noah Gray had every opportunity to continue moving forward. The guy undercut him. It wasn't intercepted.
It wasn't, not only was it not intercepted, it truly was not a turnover-worthy play. That's not one where you walk away and you say, man, we got away with that one. It wasn't. It was just maybe he'll catch it, and if not, it's out of bounds. And anyway, we know now. Thank you to PFF.
I think that we should all wake up tomorrow when you guys are watching this. I think the Broncos' record should be 1-0 because that at the end they had a field goal worthy play. And what do you want? Actual field goals, or can we just chart field goal worthy plays? Kyler Murray had a first down worthy play there right before halftime.
Yeah.
Who gets credit for that? The coach?
I think I've decided I'm going to go with the Matty Lane approach over at KC Sports Network. He calls them PFFT because they're not even worth talking about.
So it's one thing if you say quarterback rating is dry stats and it doesn't factor in situation and stuff, but QBR does that. QBR is a great stat, and you want to tell me that you can be perfect or upper echelon excellent in QBR and quarterback rating. It doesn't mean anything.
Yeah. He was starter level, according to PFF. But we're done talking about that. We've talked about it enough.
One day, he'll be Mac Jones.
Maybe.
7 points.
Anyway, what were we talking about before I opened that can of worms?
Okay. The defense was pretty good. Defensive line was pretty good. but he played pretty darn good. And maybe Orlando needs to lose 15 more pounds. Just continue that
until he can get out wide. The only other, we didn't mention this at the top with the negatives, Tommy Townsend, he didn't punt a lot, but the one he did have was not good. It was a situation, Tobe said that that's a spot where they want him to kick away, and he's got a big leg. But to me, I'm not Dave Tobe. I don't know as much about punting as he does. But when I watched that, it seemed like there was an opportunity to try and at least put that, at like the 10, and that ball bounced like 6 yards in the end zone.
Can we have a little fun with saying a guy has a big leg? It's like saying a guy has a big arm. You ever seen a hermit crab? You got the males and the females, and I mix up which one's which. But one of them has two little pinchers like this. The other one has a little pincher and this massive, incredible Hulk pincher on the other hand. I picture when they say he's got a big arm, like, too bad he doesn't have two of them.
And
he's got a big leg.
While we finish up here, we're talking.
I'm riled at PFF. This is off the tracks. This whole show is off the tracks because you said that.
Yeah, not what I was gonna say just there.
What's the PFF ranking on Butker kicking that with the bad leg?
That's what I was gonna bring up. Is in a game where
drive that point.
Just score the opening touchdown of the season. Everyone's feeling fantastic, and then you see Butker fall on the kickoff, and you're like, "Oh, that was not pretty." And then he gets up and he's not really walking right. He's limping off the field, and you're like, "Uh-oh, this isn't good."
And we're mad because that son of a gun stole Justin Reed's thunder. He had a chance at that 53-yarder.
He probably did.
All right, I'll calm down. You tell the story.
Tobe was not going to let Justin Reed kick from that far. But anyway, so, immediately into the game, you're freaking out because you're worried about the health of one of the best kickers in football. And, we still are a little bit. They'll just have to give his ankle some time. But, he gutted it out, walked back up there, and one step kicked and made a 54-yard field goal. And Tobe, again, one of the best special teams coordinators in the league for, going on 20 years, talked about that, how he's never seen a guy do a one-step 54-yard field goal because it's ridiculous. It's not supposed to be possible. But Butker's got a big leg. He's like a hermit crab.
So, a hermit crab Butker. I've been in a joking around kind of mood, and here's the deal. That was phenomenal. Mm-hmm. Could you imagine if that had been like a game winner?
Not to mention
Willis Reed.
I'm sure he was in some pain. They said his foot was swelling up as soon as he walked off the field. So it's I bet he really did have to gut through that and just swing away, and he got it to go.
So that was fantastic. The entire team's fantastic. PFF can suck an egg, and we'll see you in a couple days with a preview of the Chargers game.
All right.
We're out.